May 23, 1618, Prague Castle, Bohemia. Two royal ministers stand before an angry mob of Protestant nobles. They've been found guilty in a summary trial that lasted less than an hour. The sentence: immediate execution. But these nobles won't use a sword or an axe. Instead, they grab Vilém Slavata and Jaroslav Brzeda by their arms and legs, carry them to a window 70 feet above the castle moat, and throw them out. The secretary? He goes next. 3 men, 1 window, 70 feet down. Catholic chroniclers later claimed angels caught them mid-air. Protestant witnesses said they landed in a pile of manure. Either way, all 3 survived. But Europe? Europe wouldn't be so lucky, because what became known as the Defenestration of Prague, literally the throwing out of a window, was about to trigger the most destructive war the continent had ever seen. A 30-year cataclysm that would kill more Germans than both world wars combined. A conflict so brutal that cannibalism became commonplace, so devastating that entire regions lost 2/3 of their population. This is the story of the 30 Years' War. And to understand how throwing 2 guys out a window could lead to 8 million deaths, we need to rewind a century. The year is 1517. A German monk named Martin Luther nails 95 complaints to a church door in Wittenberg. His grievance? The Catholic Church is corrupt, selling salvation for cash through something called indulgences. Luther's protest goes viral, thanks to a new technology called the printing press. Within months, pamphlets spreading his ideas flood across Europe. The Protestant Reformation has begun. But this isn't just a religious debate. It's a full-scale crisis that shatters the unity of Western Christianity. Northern Europe, Germany, Scandinavia, parts of the Netherlands, embraces Protestantism. Southern Europe, Spain, Italy, most of France, remains solidly Catholic. And here's where it gets dangerous. Religion and politics are inseparable. Your faith determines your loyalty. Your loyalty determines whether you're a friend or an enemy. By 1618, Europe is a tinderbox. Protestant Dutch are fighting a brutal independence war against Catholic Spain, a conflict already in its 5th decade. In France, Catholic authorities nervously watch Protestant communities. In England, Protestant King James fears a Catholic resurgence. But nowhere are the divisions deeper than in the Holy Roman Empire. Now, despite its grand name, the Holy Roman Empire isn't really an empire. Voltaire later quipped it was neither holy, Roman, nor an empire. He had a point. The empire is actually a patchwork of over 300 semi-independent states. Kingdoms, principalities, duchies, free cities, each with its own government, its own army, its own agenda. Think of it like this. Imagine if the United States wasn't one country, but 300 different mini-nations, each with its own president, all loosely overseen by a figurehead emperor who gets elected by 7 powerful princes. That's the Holy Roman Empire. And these 300 states are religiously split right down the middle. The emperor, currently Ferdinand II of the Habsburg dynasty, is a hardline Catholic, but many of his princes are Lutheran. Some are Calvinists. Others remain Catholic but resent Habsburg power. Everyone's suspicious of everyone else. Officially, religious peace is maintained by a treaty from 1555, based on the principle Cuius Regio, Ius Religio, whose realm, whose religion. Translation: your subjects must follow your faith. If you're a Protestant prince, your people are Protestant. If you're Catholic, they're Catholic. Sounds simple, it's not. Because faith can't be imposed from above. Lutheran and Calvinist missionaries compete for converts. Catholic counter-reformers push back aggressively. Local populations resist when forced to change religions. Sectarian violence erupts sporadically. By 1618, the system is breaking down, and nowhere is the tension higher than in Bohemia. Bohemia, roughly modern-day Czech Republic, has a fierce tradition of religious independence. Back in the 1400s, a reformer named Jan Hus challenged the Catholic Church a full century before Luther. His followers, the Hussites, fought off 5 crusades and established their own religious practices. But Bohemia is ruled by King Ferdinand. Yes, The same Ferdinand who'll soon become emperor, and he's not having it. He's a Habsburg, educated by Jesuits, and he believes deeply that only Catholicism should exist in his domains. So Ferdinand starts canceling religious freedoms, Protestant churches, demolished Protestant nobles, stripped of positions, Protestant schools, shut down. The Bohemian nobility, a mix of Protestants, moderate Catholics, and religious independents, have had enough on that spring day in 1618. They corner Ferdinand's ministers at Prague Castle and make their point in the most dramatic way possible. The defenestration is more than just assault, it's a declaration. Bohemia will not submit. Ferdinand, sitting in Vienna, receives the news and makes his decision. Rebellion must be crushed, heresy must be stamped out. Force is the only answer. He starts gathering allies. Duke Maximilian of Bavaria, leader of the Catholic League, a coalition of Catholic German states, pledges his armies. The Duke of Saxony, technically a Lutheran but ambitious and pragmatic, is promised territorial rewards for staying loyal. And most importantly, Spain, the superpower of the age, with territories spanning from the Netherlands to the Americas, cannot allow chaos in Central Europe to threaten its interests. The imperial coalition is formidable, professional armies, deep pockets, experienced commanders. The Bohemians, by contrast, have courage and not much else. They cobble together a force of local militia, some Hungarian cavalry, and a few mercenary units. Their unity is shaky, their funding is terrible, their training is minimal, but they have momentum. In the summer of 1619, emboldened by initial success, the Bohemian Diet, their parliament, takes the ultimate step. They depose Ferdinand as King of Bohemia and elect their own candidate, a young Protestant prince named Frederick V of the Palatinate. Frederick accepts. He's crowned in Prague. For a brief moment, it looks like the rebellion might succeed. Then fate intervenes. In August 1619, the Holy Roman Emperor dies. The 7 imperial electors gather to choose a successor, and despite everything, they elect Ferdinand, the same man the Bohemians just opposed. Frederick, who thought he was just becoming King of Bohemia, suddenly realizes he's in open rebellion against the Holy Roman Emperor. This isn't a local dispute anymore. This is treason against imperial authority. The noose tightens. Ferdinand isn't rushing. He methodically gathers his forces. Polish cavalry harass the Bohemians from the north. Spanish money flows into imperial coffers, and in Bavaria, Count Tilly, one of the era's most experienced generals, drills his Catholic League army to razor sharpness. By November 1620, everything is ready. November 8, 1620, the White Mountain, just outside Prague. If you were standing on that hillside that morning, you would have seen 2 armies arrayed for battle. But you would have immediately noticed something. These armies are not evenly matched. On one side, the Bohemian rebel army, 15,000 men, poorly coordinated, inadequately armed. Their core consists of Bohemian militia, brave but inexperienced. They're supported by Hungarian cavalry, skilled riders, but notorious for their lack of discipline. And mixed in are various mercenary units who don't particularly trust each other. Their commander, Christian of Anhalt, is competent, but working with impossible material. He knows his army isn't ready for this fight, but retreat means abandoning Prague. Standing means possible annihilation. He chooses to stand. Across the field, 25,000 Imperial and Catholic League soldiers. These are professionals. Spanish tercios, massive square formations that have dominated European battlefields for a century. Bavarian infantry drilled to perfection by Duke Maximilian himself, and cavalry units led by men who've spent decades fighting the Dutch. Their commanders, Count Tilly and Maximilian of Bavaria, survey the Bohemian positions with experienced eyes. They see the gaps in the line, the hesitation in the movements, the lack of coordination. This won't take long. The battle begins around noon. Catholic artillery opens fire, but the barrage is brief. Tilly doesn't need to soften the enemy with cannon. He has a better plan. Psychological shock. The Imperial cavalry, positioned on their left flank, launches a massive charge directly at the Bohemian right wing. It's a calculated move. Tilly knows that inexperienced troops often break under cavalry assault. The sight of thousands of armored horsemen thundering toward you, the ground shaking, lances leveled, is terrifying. The Bohemian right wing does exactly what Tilly expects. They fire a ragged volley, barely slowing the cavalry charge. Then break and run. Within minutes, the entire right flank collapses. But here's where it gets worse for the Bohemians. Remember those Hungarian cavalry, the riders everyone was counting on? They don't fight. They don't even try. Instead, they wheel their horses around and gallop away from the battlefield, abandoning their Bohemian allies without firing a shot. Historians still debate why. Were they bribed? Did they lose their nerve? Were they protesting poor pay? Whatever the reason, their departure is catastrophic. Now the Bohemian army is exposed on its right flank with no cavalry protection. Tilly immediately exploits this. His cavalry wheels inward, preparing to roll up the entire Bohemian line from the side. In the center, the Catholic League infantry advances, and this is where we see the power of the Spanish tercio system in full display. A tercio is essentially a moving fortress. Picture a massive square formation, 25 ranks deep, about 3,000 men in total. The outside ranks are pikemen, soldiers carrying 18-foot pikes that create a bristling wall of spear points. Inside the square are musketeers, protected by the pikemen while they reload their slow-firing weapons. The formation moves forward slowly, inexorably, like a glacier. Enemy cavalry can't break it. Horses won't charge into a wall of pikes. Enemy infantry can't match it in close combat. The pike wall is too deep, too strong. The Bohemian center tries to hold. They fire their muskets, but the range is too long, the aim too poor. The Catholic tercios keep coming. When the formations collide, it's not even close. The Catholic pikemen are professionals who've drilled these formations thousands of times. They move as one unit, supporting each other, maintaining their formation even in the chaos of combat. The Bohemian militia, by contrast, have barely trained together. When their front ranks start falling to musket fire and pike thrusts, the rear ranks begin to waver, then to step backward, then to run. On the left flank, the Bohemian forces see both the right and center collapsing. They make the rational decision: retreat before they're surrounded. Except retreat in the face of cavalry is almost impossible. The Catholic horsemen, having routed the Bohemian right wing, are now fresh and ready. They pursue the fleeing Bohemians with ruthless efficiency. This is when the killing really begins. Medieval and early modern warfare had a brutal reality. Most casualties didn't occur during the actual fighting. They occurred during the pursuit, when fleeing soldiers were cut down from behind, defenseless. For the next several hours, Catholic cavalry chase Bohemian soldiers across the countryside. Some flee toward Prague. Others scatter into the woods. Many simply throw down their weapons and beg for mercy. They don't receive it. By the end of the day, approximately 1,000 Bohemian soldiers lie dead on the battlefield. Another 1,000 are seriously wounded, and nearly 1,000 more have been captured. The Catholic League and Imperial forces? They've lost fewer than 200 men. Frederick V, the freshly crowned King of Bohemia, doesn't even wait for the battle to end. He flees Prague that very night, earning himself the mocking nickname the Winter King, because his reign lasted just one winter. The battle took 75 minutes, but its consequences will last centuries. Ferdinand enters Prague not as a defeated king, but as a vainglorious emperor, and he's not in a forgiving mood. The rebel ringleaders are arrested. 27 of them are executed in Prague's Old Town Square in June 1621. Their severed heads are displayed on the Charles Bridge, a warning to anyone who might consider future rebellion. But the punishment goes far beyond individual leaders. Ferdinand systematically destroys Bohemian autonomy. Protestant nobles have their estates confiscated. Czech universities are placed under Jesuit control. The Czech language is suppressed in favor of German Protestant clergy are expelled. For the next 300 years, until 1918, Bohemia will remain firmly under Habsburg control. Czech national identity will be suppressed. The Czech people will call this period their Dark Age. White Mountain didn't just end a rebellion, it crushed a nation. But while Ferdinand is consolidating control over Bohemia, the war is spreading. In 1621, the 12 years truce between Spain and the Dutch Republic expires. For over a decade, these two powers have maintained an uneasy peace. Now that peace shatters and the Dutch War of Independence reignites. This matters because Spain needs to move troops from Italy to the Netherlands, and the best route runs directly through the Holy Roman Empire, which means Spanish armies will be marching through German territory. Protestant German princes watch nervously as Catholic Spanish tercios march north. Then they watch as Ferdinand's armies spend 3 years methodically crushing all remaining resistance in western Germany, clearing the Palatinate, occupying the Rhineland, subduing Westphalia. By the end of 1623, most of Western Germany is under Catholic occupation. Protestant churches are closed. Protestant nobles are dispossessed. Catholic authority is being reimposed everywhere Ferdinand's armies reach. The Protestant princes of northern Germany realize they're next, and they make a decision. Better to strike first than wait to be attacked. In 1625, Christian IV, King of Denmark and Duke of Holstein, declares war on the emperor and marches south with 20,000 Danish and German Protestant troops. Christian is an interesting figure. He's a warrior king who's fought Swedes, Poles, and anyone else who threatened Danish interests. He's also Duke of Holstein, which makes him technically a prince of the Holy Roman Empire, giving him a legal pretext for intervention. And he's genuinely worried that Catholic armies on his southern border threaten Denmark's security. But he's about to face two of the most formidable military commanders of the age. The first is Johann Cercles, Count of Tilly, commander of the Catholic League forces. Tilly is 66 years old in 1625 and has been fighting since he was 15. He learned warfare in the brutal Dutch campaigns, where siege warfare and calculated violence were standard practice. He's methodical, disciplined, and absolutely ruthless. The second is Albrecht von Wallenstein. Now, Wallenstein is one of history's most fascinating figures. He's a Bohemian Protestant by birth who converted to Catholicism for career advancement. He's also one of the wealthiest men in Central Europe, having bought up confiscated Protestant estates for pennies after White Mountain. But more importantly, he's a military entrepreneur. When Ferdinand needs an army but doesn't have the money to pay for one, Wallenstein makes an offer. I'll raise an imperial army at my own expense. I'll recruit the soldiers, buy the weapons, hire the officers. All you have to do is give me command and let my army live off the land. Ferdinand accepts. By 1625, Wallenstein has raised an army of 50,000 men, the largest single force in the empire. And here's the key innovation. Wallenstein doesn't try to pay his army from the imperial treasury. Instead, he lets them pay themselves through systematic plunder. Each region his army occupies must provide food, fodder, quarters, and regular contributions, essentially protection money. If a town refuses, Wallenstein's soldiers take what they want by force. It's brutal, it's effective, and it transforms warfare. Christian IV doesn't stand a chance. For 3 years, Tilly and Wallenstein systematically push the Danes out of Germany. Every time Christian tries to make a stand, the imperial forces outmaneuver him. When he tries to retreat, they pursue relentlessly. The decisive moment comes in 1626 at the Battle of Lutter. Tilly catches the Danish army at a disadvantage and crushes it, killing or capturing nearly half of Christian's forces. The Danish king barely escapes with his life. By 1628, Wallenstein has occupied the entire Baltic coast. Danish power is broken in 1629. Christian IV surrenders, promising to never again interfere in imperial affairs. Ferdinand sees total victory within reach, and he decides to press his advantage. In March 1629, he issues the Edict of Restitution, a decree that retroactively invalidates 75 years of Protestant gains. Every church, monastery, and piece of land that had been Catholic in 1555 must now be returned to Catholic control, no exceptions. It's an incredibly inflammatory move. Hundreds of Protestant churches face closure. Thousands of Protestant clergy face expulsion. Entire Protestant communities face forced conversion or exile. Even many Catholics think Ferdinand has gone too far. The imperial electors, the 7 powerful princes who elect the emperor, meet at Regensburg in 1630. They're alarmed by Ferdinand's extremism and worried about Wallenstein's massive, expensive army. They pressure Ferdinand to dismiss Wallenstein and reduce the army's size, hoping to de-escalate the situation and avoid wider war. Ferdinand reluctantly agrees. In August 1630, Wallenstein is removed from command and ordered to retire to his estates in Bohemia. The timing couldn't be worse, because on July 6, 1630, while the electors are meeting in Regensburg, a fleet of 200 ships carrying 13,000 Swedish soldiers lands on the Baltic coast of Germany. Their commander is Gustavus Adolphus, King of Sweden. He's 35 years old, a devout Lutheran, and about to revolutionize warfare. The Swedish storm has arrived. To understand what's about to happen, you need to understand Gustavus Adolphus. He became King of Sweden at age 16 when his father died. He inherited a kingdom at war with Denmark, Russia, and Poland, all at the same time. Most rulers would have been overwhelmed. Gustavus thrived. Over 15 years, he defeated all 3 enemies, expanded Swedish territory, and transformed Sweden from a regional power into a major European force. But more importantly, he revolutionized military tactics. Remember those Spanish tercios we talked about? Massive square formations, 3,000 men, 25 ranks deep, moving slowly but nearly invincible? Gustavus tears up that playbook. His innovation starts with unit size. Instead of 3,000-man tercios, he uses smaller battalions of 500 to 600 men. This makes units more flexible, easier to maneuver, quicker to respond to changing battlefield conditions. Second, he changes formation depth. Instead of 25 ranks deep, he deploys just 6 ranks. This seems counterintuitive. Aren't you more vulnerable with fewer ranks? But here's the key. With 6 ranks instead of 25, more soldiers can actually fire their weapons simultaneously. The old tercio system had most soldiers just standing there, unable to fight because they were buried inside the formation. Gustavus's shallower formations put more firepower on the front line. Third, and this is revolutionary, he integrates artillery directly into infantry regiments. Traditional armies keep their heavy cannon in the rear. Gustavus creates light, mobile regimental guns that move with the infantry, providing immediate fire support wherever it's needed. Finally, he emphasizes combined arms coordination. His infantry, cavalry, and artillery don't operate independently. They work together in synchronized attacks. Cavalry charges at the right moment to exploit gaps created by infantry. Artillery suppresses enemy positions just before infantry assault. Everything flows together. The result? The Swedish army is faster, more flexible, and delivers heavier firepower than anything else on European battlefields. Gustavus is about to prove it. When he lands in Pomerania in July 1630, the Protestant German princes are terrified of him, not relieved by him. They don't want another foreign army trampling through Germany. They've seen what Danish intervention brought: devastation, defeat, and Habsburg retaliation. Gustavus uses a combination of threats and promises to bring them on side. Some cities open their gates willingly, others need convincing. By spring 1631, he's built an army of nearly 40,000 men, Swedes, Germans, Scots, and various mercenaries. But one place allies with him completely willingly: the Protestant city of Magdeburg. Magdeburg is a wealthy commercial center on the Elbe River with about 30,000 residents. It's strategically vital and fiercely Protestant. When Gustavus calls for allies, Magdeburg answers enthusiastically. Count Tilly, still commanding the Catholic League forces, sees Magdeburg's defiance as an opportunity. If he can crush this city, he'll send a message to every Protestant community in Germany. Resistance brings annihilation. In March 1631, Tilly's army surrounds Magdeburg. The siege lasts 2 months. The city refuses surrender. Its defenders, inspired by Protestant fervor and counting on Swedish relief, hold out stubbornly. Gustavus tries to break through, but he's blocked by other imperial forces. He can't reach Magdeburg in time. On May 20th, 1631, Tilly launches a final assault. What happens next is one of the great atrocities of European history. Tilly's soldiers storm the walls, resistance collapses, then discipline collapses. The Catholic troops, many unpaid for months, frustrated by the long siege, pour into the city and begin a massacre. The mayor of Magdeburg later wrote, "The city was given over to murder, burning, plundering, torture, and beatings. Thousands of innocent men, women, and children were murdered and slaughtered in all sorts of merciless and wretched ways. Whether by accident or deliberate arson, fires break out. The city, mostly wooden buildings, burns rapidly. By nightfall. Magdeburg is an inferno. By the next morning, over 20,000 people are dead. The entire city is ash. Only the cathedral and a few stone buildings remain standing." The Sack of Magdeburg sends shockwaves across Europe. Protestant pamphleteers spread detailed accounts, with woodcut illustrations showing piles of bodies and burning buildings. The name Magdeburg becomes synonymous with Catholic brutality. Tilly tries to distance himself from the massacre, claiming he couldn't control his troops. But the damage is done, both to his reputation and to the Catholic cause. Protestant soldiers swear revenge. They invent a phrase, Magdeburg Quarter, meaning no mercy, no prisoners. Swedish troops develop a particularly horrific punishment called the Schwettentrunk, the Swedish drink. They force captured Catholic soldiers to drink massive quantities of water, filth, or manure until their stomachs rupture. The war is escalating from political conflict into total war. The rules are breaking down. Atrocity begets atrocity. And Gustavus Adolphus, horrified by Magdeburg's fate, becomes more determined than ever to crush the imperial forces. His opportunity comes that September 17, 1631. A village called Breitenfeld, about 6 miles north of Leipzig. Two armies face each other across an open field. On one side, Count Tilly with 35,000 Imperial and Catholic League troops, battle-hardened veterans, many of whom fought at White Mountain and through all the campaigns since. On the other side, Gustavus Adolphus with 24,000 Swedes and 18,000 Saxons, a combined force of 42,000. But the Saxon contingent is questionable. They're recently raised troops, poorly trained, and their commander, Elector John George of Saxony, only joined Gustavus reluctantly after years of trying to stay neutral. This is the matchup everyone's been waiting for. The old system versus the new. The victor of White Mountain versus the Lion of the North. Let's look at how these armies are deployed. Tilly arranges his forces in the traditional manner. His infantry forms a massive center, thick tercios deployed in a line. His cavalry is split between both wings. His artillery sits in the rear, too heavy to move once the battle starts. Gustavus deploys very differently. His infantry is in the center, but organized in smaller, more flexible battalions. More importantly, he places light regimental cannon right there with the infantry. Not in the rear, but on the front line. His cavalry is also split between the wings. But he adds something unexpected. Small groups of musketeers mixed in with the cavalry to provide fire support. And he places himself on the right wing, personally leading his Swedish cavalry. The battle begins around noon. Tilly makes the first move, sending his cavalry on his left wing in a massive charge against Gustavus's right. Here's what Tilly expects. His heavy cavalry will smash through the Swedish horse, roll up their flank, and then sweep into the rear of Gustavus's army. It's a proven tactic that's worked in dozens of battles. But Gustavus has prepared for exactly this. As the Imperial cavalry charges, they run into something they didn't expect. The Swedish cavalry doesn't just countercharge. Instead, The small groups of musketeers mixed in with the cavalry open fire at close range. Cavalry horses, when they take musket fire, don't heroically charge forward. They panic, rear up, bolt sideways. The imperial charge loses momentum and coherence. Instead of hitting the Swedish line in one unified impact, they arrive in confused clumps. The Swedish cavalry countercharges at that exact moment, striking the disorganized imperial horsemen. A fierce melee erupts, sabers clashing, horses wheeling, men shouting. The imperial cavalry regroups and charges again, and again, and again. By some accounts, they make 8 separate charges attempting to break the Swedish right wing. Each time, they're met with musket fire, then countercharged. Each time, they're pushed back with casualties. Finally, bloodied and exhausted, the imperial left wing falls back. Tilly's plan on that flank has failed. But on the other end of the battlefield, Tilly's right-wing cavalry is having success. They charge the Saxon left wing, those questionable troops we mentioned earlier, and the Saxons do exactly what Gustavus feared they might. They break and run. Within minutes, 18,000 Saxon soldiers are fleeing the battlefield. Elector John George himself joins the retreat, ragging hard for the safety of nearby Eilenburg. Now Tilly sees an opportunity. The entire Saxon wing has collapsed. He orders his right-wing cavalry and nearby infantry to pursue, sweeping across the now empty battlefield toward the exposed Swedish left flank. For a brief moment, it looks like Tilly might win after all. The Swedish army is about to be hit in the side, rolled up from their left, and destroyed. But Gustavus sees it too. Remember those flexible battalions we talked about? Here's where they prove their worth. Gustavus orders his reserve units on the left to quickly wheel 90 degrees and form a new defensive line facing the advancing imperial forces. Instead of getting hit in their exposed flank, the Swedes present an organized battle line. But Gustavus doesn't stop with defense. He sees something else. In their eagerness to pursue the fleeing Saxons, Tilly's right-wing forces have become separated from his center. A gap has opened up. This is the moment. Gustavus orders a general advance. His center battalions surge forward. His right-wing cavalry, having repulsed 8 imperial charges, now goes on the offensive, and those light regimental guns that are integrated with his infantry. They move forward too, getting close enough to blast the imperial tercios at devastating range. The imperial center, those supposedly invincible tercios, suddenly find themselves being attacked from 2 directions. Gustavus's infantry is pressing from the front. His cavalry is swinging around to hit their flank, and Swedish artillery is firing into them at ranges where every shot rips through multiple ranks. The tercios try to turn to face the new threats, but that's exactly their weakness. These massive, deep formations are strong when facing one direction, but they can't quickly pivot. They can't flexibly respond to attacks from multiple angles. As Swedish pressure increases, Tilly makes a desperate decision: counterattack with his cavalry. He orders his right wing to stop pursuing Saxons and ride back to support the center. But they're too far away and too late. Swedish artillery pounds the imperial tercios. Swedish infantry keeps pressing, and then critically, some of the tercios start to waver. Fear spreads. Men in the rear ranks begin to drift backward. And once a few men start running, it becomes contagious. The imperial center breaks. Soldiers throw down their weapons and flee. Tilly himself is nearly captured, barely escaping on horseback. Now comes the pursuit. Swedish and remaining Saxon cavalry chase the fleeing imperial soldiers across miles of countryside. This is where the casualties mount. Fighting armies usually suffer similar losses, but once one side breaks and runs, the killing becomes one-sided. By nightfall, the body count is stark. At least 7,000 imperial soldiers dead, nearly 6,000 captured, all the artillery lost, all the baggage train captured. Swedish and Saxon losses? Approximately 2,000 dead. Breitenfeld is a crushing defeat for the old system, and a stunning validation of the new. Tilly, who'd never lost a major battle in his entire career, has been decisively beaten. More importantly, Protestant forces have proven they can defeat the supposedly invincible imperial army. The psychological impact is enormous. Protestant princes across Germany take heart. Protestant soldiers believe they're fighting for a winning cause. And the road to southern Germany lies open. Gustavus spends the next year marching through southern Germany, liberating Protestant territories, defeating smaller imperial forces, and getting closer and closer to the Habsburg heartlands. By spring 1632, he's in Bavaria, threatening the very region of Maximilian, the Catholic League leader. Tilly tries to stop the Swedish advance at the town of Rain but fails worse during the battle. Tilly is struck by a cannonball. The 73-year-old general dies of his wounds 2 weeks later. Ferdinand is desperate. The Catholic cause is collapsing. He needs his best general back. In April 1632, he swallows his pride and recalls Albrecht von Wallenstein. He gives Wallenstein supreme command of all imperial forces and promises not to interfere with his decisions. Wallenstein quickly raises a new army. He's done it before. He can do it again. By summer 1632, he has 40,000 men under his command. Gustavus has moved north to Nuremberg, a wealthy Protestant city. Wallenstein marches to nearby Zirndorf and sets up a fortified camp. For 11 weeks, the two armies face each other without fighting. Both are waiting for the other to make a mistake. Both are suffering terribly from disease and starvation. The region around Nuremberg simply can't feed two massive armies sitting still. Finally, Gustavus tries a direct assault on Wallenstein's fortified position. It fails, costing 2,000 Swedish casualties. Wallenstein holds firm. Both armies are exhausted, starving, and plagued by typhus. They need to break camp and find fresh territory to plunder. Wallenstein moves first, marching northeast into Saxony. His goal: force the Saxons to abandon their alliance with Sweden by ravaging their lands. Gustavus follows. He can't let Wallenstein destroy Saxony unopposed. On November 15th, he catches up with Wallenstein near the town of Lutzen. Now Wallenstein has just sent away 8,000 troops under his cavalry commander Pappenheim to raid elsewhere. He's not expecting battle. When he receives word that Gustavus is approaching with the entire Swedish army, he immediately recalls Pappenheim, but the reinforcements won't arrive until the next day. Gustavus knows this. He knows he has a narrow window where he outnumbers Wallenstein. If he attacks immediately, he can win. If he waits, Pappenheim returns and the odds shift. But there's a problem: fog. On the morning of November 16, 1632, a thick fog blankets the battlefield. Visibility is down to just a few dozen yards. Gustavus can't see Wallenstein's positions. He can't coordinate his formations. He has to wait for the fog to lift. Hours pass. Wallenstein uses the time to strengthen his positions and send urgent messages to Pappenheim. Come back immediately. We need you. Around 10 a.m., the fog finally begins to clear. Gustavus doesn't wait any longer. He orders the attack. The Swedish army advances across an open field toward Wallenstein's positions. Imperial artillery opens fire, tearing holes in the Swedish formations, but Gustavus's troops keep moving forward, closing the distance. On the Swedish left wing, cavalry clash in a fierce melee. It's back and forth fighting, neither side gaining a decisive advantage. In the center, Swedish infantry assault the imperial positions. They capture a raised roadway that Wallenstein had been using as a defensive line. Swedish artillery moves up and begins firing into the imperial rear areas. But on the Swedish right wing, things aren't going well. Imperial artillery and musket fire have stopped the Swedish advance. The attack is stalling. Gustavus is watching from horseback, trying to coordinate his forces. He sees his right wing struggling, and he makes a decision. The same decision he's made dozens of times before: lead from the front. He gathers a unit of cavalry, about 400 riders, and prepares to lead a charge personally to reinforce the right wing. It's classic Gustavus: be where the fighting is fiercest. Inspire the troops, turn the battle by personal example. His commanders beg him not to go. "You're the king. You're the only thing holding this army together. If something happens to you..." Gustavus doesn't listen. He shouts, "Follow me," and spurs his horse forward. And then, suddenly, inexplicably, the fog rolls back in, thicker than before. Within seconds, visibility drops to nearly nothing. The battlefield becomes a chaos of confused shouts, the clash of invisible weapons, the screams of wounded men and horses. Gustavus and his 400 cavalry plunge into this fog bank and collide with Imperial cavalry somewhere in the murk. In the confused melee that follows, Gustavus is separated from his bodyguards. He's fighting half-blind in the fog. A pistol shot hits him in the arm. He keeps fighting. Another bullet strikes his back. He slumps forward but stays in the saddle. Then a musket ball, fired from close range, strikes him in the chest, just above his heart. Gustavus Adolphus, King of Sweden, age 38, falls from his horse into the trampled mud of a German battlefield. Imperial cavalry don't even realize who they've killed. They strip his distinctive armor and move on. Searching for other victims, his famous white horse, riderless and bloody, wanders back towards Swedish lines. For several hours, no one in the Swedish army knows for certain that the king is dead. Bernhard of Saxe-Weimar, Gustavus's second in command, suspects the worst but keeps quiet. He continues directing the battle as if Gustavus is still alive. And remarkably, the Swedish army keeps fighting. They recapture the road, they push forward. They seize Wallenstein's artillery. Wallenstein, exhausted and facing troops who seem driven by fury rather than breaking in despair, orders a retreat. His army pulls back to Leipzig, leaving the battlefield to the Swedes. Technically, Lutzen is a Swedish victory. They held the field. They captured the enemy guns. But when Swedish soldiers find their king's stripped body lying in the mud, still warm but unmistakably dead, the victory means nothing. Officers weep openly. Soldiers kneel in prayer. Some collapse in grief. The Lion of the North, the champion of Protestantism, the man who had turned the war around, is gone. Without Gustavus, the Swedish position in Germany becomes precarious. They have good generals, but they don't have a unifying leader who can hold the fragile Protestant coalition together. They don't have someone with the prestige to negotiate with France, the skill to inspire soldiers, and the tactical genius to keep winning battles against superior numbers. The war isn't over, but Swedish hopes for a quick, decisive victory died at Lutzen alongside their king. In the aftermath of Lutzen, Wallenstein withdraws to winter quarters in Bohemia. His army is battered, undersupplied, and demoralized. And Wallenstein himself seems changed. Less aggressive, more cautious, increasingly withdrawn. Throughout 1633, he conducts a strange, passive campaign. He has opportunities to attack weakened Swedish forces, but doesn't take them. He negotiates secretly with various parties: Protestant Germans, the Swedes, the French, the Saxons. At first, Ferdinand assumes Wallenstein is just being strategic, keeping options open. But by late 1633, Imperial agents bring disturbing reports. Wallenstein isn't just negotiating, he's plotting, he's considering switching sides, or making a separate peace, or possibly setting himself up as an independent prince. Whether these accusations are true remains debated by historians. Wallenstein was certainly ambitious and unconventional, but he was also extremely loyal to his own vision of order and stability. And he may have genuinely believed the war needed to end through negotiation rather than more bloodshed. Ferdinand doesn't care about Wallenstein's motives. He cares about control, and he can't tolerate a general with his own agenda. In January 1634, Ferdinand secretly declares Wallenstein a traitor and orders his arrest. But there's a problem. Wallenstein still commands the imperial army. Most officers are personally loyal to him. A direct confrontation could split the army. So Ferdinand's agents move quietly. They approach a few key officers, show them the emperor's decree, and promise rewards for cooperation. On February 25, 1634, while Wallenstein is staying in the town of Eger, A group of imperial officers loyal to Ferdinand corner him in his quarters. Wallenstein, weakened by illness and gout, barely resists. He's stabbed multiple times and dies within minutes. His murder sends shockwaves through Europe. A general who commanded armies of 100,000 men, who'd made kings and emperors negotiate with him, has been assassinated by his own side. But for Ferdinand, it solves the problem. Now he can fully control the imperial war effort. In 1634, a combined Spanish and imperial army of 33,000 men marches into Bavaria. Their commander is Ferdinand's son, also named Ferdinand, later to become Emperor Ferdinand III, along with Spanish Cardinal Infante, brother of Spain's king. A Swedish and Protestant German force of 26,000 moves to intercept them at Nördlingen. The battle, fought on September 5th to 6th, 1634, is a disaster for the Protestant forces. Part of the problem is leadership. Without Gustavus Adolphus, the Protestant commanders squabble over tactics and can't agree on a unified plan. They make the mistake of attacking a well-fortified imperial position on high ground. Swedish infantry assaults uphill under heavy fire. They take enormous casualties but keep pressing forward, testament to their training and discipline. For a while, it looks like Swedish determination might prevail. But then Spanish reinforcements arrive. Fresh tercios move up to reinforce the defensive positions. Imperial and Spanish artillery concentrates fire on the Swedish assault columns. The Swedish advance stalls. Units become disorganized. Officers are killed. Gaps open in the formations. Imperial cavalry sees their chance and charges into these gaps. Once the cavalry penetrates the Swedish line, everything collapses. Men break and run. Organized retreat becomes panicked flight. By the end of the battle, the Swedish army has lost nearly half its force. Roughly 12,000 men killed, wounded, or captured. It's the worst Swedish defeat of the entire war. The psychological impact is devastating. Protestant German princes who'd allied with Sweden suddenly reconsider. Many begin secret negotiations with Ferdinand. Some openly change sides. By early 1635, the Protestant coalition is falling apart. Ferdinand offers generous terms. He'll stop enforcing the Edict of Restitution. He'll grant amnesty to former rebels. All they have to do is abandon foreign alliances and submit to imperial authority. Most Protestant princes accept. The treaties of Prague, signed in May 1635, bring most of Germany back under imperial control. Sweden, isolated and weakened, seems on the verge of withdrawal. The war appears to be winding down. It's not, because a new player is about to enter, one that will ensure the war continues for another 13 years. France has been involved in the 30 Years' War from the beginning, just not openly. Since 1629, Cardinal Richelieu, France's chief minister, has been secretly funding Protestant forces. French gold subsidized Sweden's intervention. French diplomats encouraged German princes to resist Habsburg power. Why? France is Catholic, so why help Protestants? Because religion isn't the only factor. In fact, for Richelieu, it's not even the main factor. What matters is power politics, and from France's perspective, the Habsburg dynasty is the primary threat. Look at a map. France is surrounded by Habsburg territories. Spain to the south, the Spanish Netherlands to the north, and the Holy Roman Empire, controlled by the Austrian Habsburgs to the east. If the Habsburgs become too powerful, they can encircle and threaten France. So Richelieu's strategy is simple. Keep the Habsburgs divided and weakened by supporting their enemies, regardless of religion. After Nördlingen, with Sweden collapsing and most German princes submitting to Habsburg control, Richelieu realizes covert support isn't enough. If France wants to prevent Habsburg dominance, it needs to commit openly. In May 1635, France declares war on Spain. Now here's the interesting part. France doesn't declare war on the Holy Roman Emperor, at least not officially. Instead, French armies attack Spanish positions in the Netherlands and Italy, claiming they're defending French interests, not joining the religious war in Germany. It's a legal fiction. but it allows France to maintain its image as a Catholic power while fighting other Catholics. But Richelieu immediately faces a crisis. Spanish armies in the Netherlands push south into northern France. Other Spanish forces advance from the Spanish-controlled Franche-Comté in the east. By the summer of 1636, Spanish troops have reached Corbie, less than 70 miles from Paris. Panic grips the French capital. Refugees flood into the city. Nobles start evacuating their families. Some even suggest suing for peace. But French forces rally. They gather a relief army, march to Corbie, and in a sharp counter-offensive, drive the Spanish back. The crisis passes. Meanwhile, French subsidies revive the Swedish war effort. French regiments march into Germany to reinforce Protestant forces, and French diplomats work overtime to keep Protestant German states in the war. The conflict is now truly international. Spain is fighting France in the Netherlands, Italy, and along the French-Spanish border. Imperial forces are fighting Swedish and French armies in Germany, and smaller conflicts erupt in peripheral theaters. The war has become almost impossible to resolve because there are too many participants with conflicting interests. Spain wants to crush Dutch independence and maintain its supply routes through Germany. France wants to weaken Habsburg power. Sweden wants to secure the Baltic and guarantee Protestant rights. The Emperor wants to restore imperial authority and Catholic dominance. Protestant German princes want autonomy. Catholic German princes want security. Satisfying all these demands simultaneously is impossible, so the war continues. And in 1637, another key figure dies. Emperor Ferdinand II, the man whose religious intransigence started it all, dies at age 58. His son, Ferdinand III, becomes the new emperor. Ferdinand III is more pragmatic than his father. He's willing to negotiate, willing to compromise, but he inherits a war that has taken on a momentum of its own. The years from 1637 to 1648 become a war of attrition. There are battles, sieges, campaigns, but no decisive breakthroughs. Armies march back and forth across Germany, destroying everything in their path, but unable to force a final resolution. In 1639, Sweden gets a new field commander, Johan Boehner. He's aggressive, skilled, and willing to take risks. He wins surprising victories at Chemnitz and Wittstock, temporarily reviving Swedish fortunes. But he's operating on a shoestring budget. His troops are often unpaid and on the verge of mutiny, and he can never sustain an advance long enough to deliver a knockout blow. When Boehner dies of illness in 1641, he's replaced by Lennart Torstensson, another capable Swedish general. Torstensson wins another victory at Breitenfeld in 1642, ironically, at the same location where Gustavus Adolphus triumphed 11 years earlier. But even victories don't change the strategic situation. Sweden controls much of northern Germany, but can't push deep enough south to threaten Vienna. The Swedes hold territory, but they can't end the war. In the west, France is making slow progress. French armies push into southern Germany, but they face a resilient opponent in Franz von Mercy, Bavaria's brilliant defensive general. In 1643, France wins its greatest victory of the entire war at Rocroi. Louis de Bourbon, Duke of Enghien, just 21 years old and fighting his first major battle, faces a veteran Spanish army. The Spanish are deploying the classic tercio system, those massive square formations that have dominated European warfare for over a century. Enghien, inspired by Gustavus Adolphus's reforms, uses newer, more flexible tactics. He coordinates his infantry, cavalry, and artillery in rapid synchronized assaults. He maneuvers around the slower Spanish formations, and in the decisive moment, he orders a cavalry charge that breaks through the Spanish lines and smashes into the tercios from behind. The tercios, attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, unable to turn and reform quickly enough, break apart. Spanish casualties are devastating. Over 7,000 dead, 5,000 captured. Rocroi is more than just a victory, it's symbolic. The Spanish tercio system, unbeaten for a century, is finally obsolete. The era of Spanish military dominance is over. France is now the premier land power in Europe. But even Rocroi doesn't end the war, because by 1643, everyone is exhausted, but no one can agree on peace terms. Finally, in 1644, peace negotiations begin in earnest in the Westphalian towns of Munster and Osnabrück. Diplomats from dozens of states gather to work out an agreement. But while diplomats talk, soldiers keep fighting. Both sides want to improve their negotiating positions by winning military victories. The war drags on for 4 more years while peace talks slowly progress. In Germany, Bavaria is ravaged repeatedly. Franz von Mercy fights desperately to defend his homeland, but is killed at Allerheim in 1645. Without Mercy, Bavaria is essentially defenseless. French and Swedish armies march through Bavaria at will, plundering and destroying. Duke Maximilian of Bavaria, remember him from White Mountain, the Catholic League leader who started this whole thing 30 years ago, is still alive and watching his duchy destroyed. He offers to make peace separately, then rejoins the war when pressured by the emperor, then tries to make peace again. He's trapped in a cycle he can't escape. By 1648, everyone is finished. The armies are exhausted, the treasuries are empty, the land is devastated. There's simply nothing left to fight with or fight for. In May 1648, the last major imperial field army is destroyed at Zusmarshausen. The remnants fall back into southern Germany, with French and Swedish forces pursuing. A Swedish force marches on Prague, the city where this all began 30 years ago. They capture part of the city but can't take the castle where, ironically, one of the original defenestration victims, Jaroslav Berzita, is helping organize the defense. Neither side has the strength to continue. The war has burned itself out. In October 1648, the diplomats at Westphalia finally reach agreement. The Peace of Westphalia, actually 2 treaties signed in Munster and Osnabrück, is announced. The terms represent compromises that would have seemed impossible in 1618. Religious tolerance is mandated. Rulers can choose their faith, but they can't force conversion of subjects. Protestant and Catholic communities must coexist. The Edict of Restitution is nullified. Properties secularized before 1624 remain secularized. No more retroactive reclamations. The Dutch Republic and Swiss Confederation are officially recognized as independent states, no longer part of the Habsburg domains. France gains Alsace, Sweden gains Western Pomerania and several German ports, plus cash reparations. Brandenburg gains Eastern Pomerania. Most importantly, the Peace of Westphalia establishes the principle of state sovereignty, that independent states have the right to govern themselves without external interference. This becomes a foundational concept of international law. When news of the peace arrives, fighting stops. Soldiers, many of whom have known nothing but war their entire adult lives, lay down their weapons. The 30 Years' War is over. The war lasted 30 years, but its effects lasted for centuries. The demographic catastrophe is almost incomprehensible. Estimates suggest 5 to 8 million people died across all theaters. The hardest hit regions of Germany lost 50 to 70% of their population. Let that sink in. Imagine every other person you know simply gone. Killed in battle, starved to death, succumbed to disease, or fled as refugees never to return. Some specific regions were essentially depopulated. The Palatinate, which had 500,000 people in 1618, had fewer than 50,000 by 1648. Württemberg lost 3/4 of its people. Pomerania lost 2/3. Economic devastation was equally severe. Agricultural production collapsed in many areas. Trade routes were disrupted. Cities that depended on commerce saw their populations shrink dramatically. It took some regions more than a century to recover economically. Culturally, the war left deep scars. Germany, which had been experiencing a cultural and intellectual flourishing in the early 1600s, was set back generations. The German language, literature, and arts stagnated. Many talented people emigrated or died. Universities closed or barely functioned. Politically, the Holy Roman Empire survived in name, but was fundamentally weakened. The individual German states, about 300 of them, became effectively independent. The idea of a unified Germany was set back by nearly 250 years. Not until 1871 would Germany finally unify under Prussian leadership. For Sweden, the war brought temporary great power status, but it cost the country enormously in blood and treasure. And Sweden's military dominance wouldn't last. By the early 1700s, Sweden would be defeated by Russia and reduced to a second-tier power. For France, the war confirmed its position as Europe's dominant land power, a position it would hold for the next 150 years until the Napoleonic Wars. For Spain, the war marked the beginning of decline. The loss at Rocroi, combined with continuing wars in the Netherlands and Portugal, exhausted Spanish resources. Spain's era as Europe's superpower was ending. But perhaps the war's most important legacy is the Peace of Westphalia itself. The treaties established principles that still influence international relations today. State sovereignty, diplomatic equality, negotiated settlements rather than religious or ideological crusades. Before Westphalia, the idea of a nation-state with defined borders and supreme authority over its territory was unclear. After Westphalia, it became the organizing principle of European and eventually global politics. The United Nations system, modern international law, concepts of territorial integrity, all trace their intellectual ancestry back to 1648. So what do we make of this catastrophe? The 30 Years' War started with what seems, in retrospect, like a manageable local dispute. Bohemian Protestants resented their Catholic king's policies. They had legitimate grievances. Both sides could have found compromises. Instead, it spiraled. Each side escalated. Each atrocity justified another atrocity in response. Each intervention by a foreign power brought in another foreign power. Religious differences became political conflicts, became international wars. And once it started, no one could stop it. Leaders who wanted peace were replaced by leaders who wanted victory. Moderate voices were drowned out by extremists. The war created its own momentum, its own logic. For 300 years after 1648, the 30 Years' War stood as a terrible cautionary tale. European leaders and intellectuals pointed to it as the ultimate example of how a small conflict could spiral into an uncontrollable catastrophe. And then, in 1914, they ignored the lesson. World War I started with a similar pattern: local dispute, escalating commitments, alliance systems dragging in more powers, ideological rigidity, preventing compromise. The Great War killed 20 million people and destroyed 4 empires. 20 years later, World War II killed even more. The lesson of the 30 Years' War: that wars spiral beyond anyone's control, that revenge begets revenge, that ideological certainty leads to catastrophe, keeps needing to be relearned. Today, we see religious and ideological conflicts in many parts of the world. We see escalating rhetoric. We see outside powers intervening in local disputes. We see the same patterns that led to 1618. The 30 Years' War reminds us where those patterns lead. It shows us the human cost of letting conflicts spiral. It demonstrates that once violence becomes normalized, once each side dehumanizes the other, once the goal shifts from resolving disputes to totally defeating enemies, the results are catastrophic. 8 million people died in the 30 Years' War. Most were civilians. Most died not gloriously in battle, but miserably from starvation and disease. Their deaths accomplished nothing except to exhaust both sides to the point where they couldn't fight anymore. That's the truth about total war. There are no winners, only survivors. If this history resonates with you, I encourage you to learn more. The 30 Years' War shaped the modern world in ways we're still discovering. Understanding it helps us understand contemporary conflicts and the patterns that lead to escalation. Share this video with someone who cares about history, international relations, or military strategy. The lessons here aren't just academic, they're urgent and relevant. And if you want to explore more content like this, deep dives into pivotal historical moments, detailed battle analysis, and the human stories behind great events, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. More importantly, think about the lessons here. When you see contemporary conflicts, ask yourself, are we seeing escalation patterns? Are both sides dehumanizing each other? Are outside powers making things worse? Are there off-ramps being ignored? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The 30 Years' War happened because people let small disputes become existential conflicts. We have the knowledge to avoid that mistake. The question is, will we use it? Thanks for watching, and remember, the past isn't dead, it's not even past.